The sun beat down on Elif's broad shoulders as she hauled a basket overflowing with dates. Sweat beaded on her brow, but a smile played on her lips. Her laughter, loud and clear, echoed through the palace gardens. Elif, a slave girl of 18, Summers, possessed a strength unlike any other in the Sultan's harem. Her arms, tanned and muscular from years of working the land, could lift burdens that made the other girls wince. Her legs, strong and sturdy, carried her with a confident stride. While the other concubines prized their delicate hands and pale skin, Elif's sun-browned skin and calloused palms spoke of honest labor and a spirit unbent by the confines of the palace walls. The other women, adorned in silks and jewels, watched Elif from the shaded balconies, their expressions a mixture of amusement and disdain. They whispered amongst themselves, their words like the sting of desert wasps. "Look at the ox," one giggled, her voice laced with scorn. "She looks more like a stable boy than a woman of the harem." Another chimed in, "Imagine her trying to dance. She'd likely crush the Sultan's toes." They found Elif's hearty laugh vulgar, her strong body an affront to their carefully cultivated fragility. They preferred to cultivate an image of ethereal beauty, believing their delicate forms the only path to the Sultan's favor. Meanwhile, Sultan Dawood, a man of 32 years, sat in his private studio, a haven of cool marble and the scent of clay. He was not a man easily swayed by superficial charms. A philosopher king, he spent his days pondering the mysteries of the universe, and his nights shaping marble into expressions of his thoughts. He had grown weary of the endless parade of delicate beauties in his harem. Their painted smiles and practiced graces felt hollow, their conversations as thin as the silk veils they wore. He longed for something real, something authentic. His eyes, trained to see the world through an artist's lens, sought beauty in the strength of a tree trunk, the curve of a bird's wing, the ripple of muscles beneath a laborer's skin. He craved substance over surface, truth over illusion. He knew it existed somewhere, this beauty he sought, but it remained elusive, hidden beneath layers of artifice and expectation. He sighed, running a hand through his beard, his gaze falling upon a half-finished sculpture of a powerful goddess, her limbs still awaiting his touch to bring them to life. The steam in the marble bathhouse swirled like a gentle fog, carrying with it the scent of rosewater and the hushed whispers of the Sultan's concubines. Elif, accustomed to the hard work of the gardens, found the languid atmosphere of the bathhouse unsettling. The smooth marble felt slippery beneath her feet, and the perfumed air made her head spin. She dipped a toe into the warm water, testing its temperature, while the other women, already submerged, watched her with veiled amusement. They reclined gracefully in the shallow pools, their slender bodies draped in thin linens, their hair piled high on their heads. "Look at her," one whispered, her voice barely audible above the gentle splash of water. "She doesn't even know how to bathe properly." Another giggled, pointing to Elif's broad shoulders. "Such a strange shape. Like a wrestler. Not a woman." Elif's cheeks burned with shame. She tried to ignore their taunts, focusing on the soothing warmth of the water, but their words stung like nettles. She had always been proud of her strength, but here, in this haven of delicate beauty, it felt like a curse. Suddenly, the laughter ceased. A hush fell over the bathhouse as Sultan Dawood entered, his presence announced by the soft rustle of his silk robes. He paused at the entrance, his gaze sweeping over the assembled women. He seemed to take no notice of their carefully arranged poses or their coy smiles. Instead, his eyes landed on Elif, standing alone at the edge of the pool. He studied her. For a long moment, his expression thoughtful, his artist's eye tracing the lines of her strong body, the curve of her muscular arms, the proud set of her head. The concubines held their breath, waiting for the Sultan to acknowledge one of them, to bestow a smile or a word of praise. But Dawood remained silent, his gaze fixed on Elif. Finally, he stepped forward, his voice resonating through the still air. "Magnificent," he murmured, his words directed solely at Elif. "Truly magnificent." The other women gasped, their faces a mixture of disbelief and envy. Dawood approached Elif, his eyes filled with an admiration they had never seen, directed at any of them. "Your form," he said, his voice low and intense, "is a vision of strength and grace. You remind me of the ancient goddesses, powerful and untamed." He gestured towards his studio. "I'm sculpting a goddess of strength. I would be honored if you would be my model." Elif, stunned by his words, could only stare at him, her heart pounding in her chest. Shame and awe warred within her, leaving her speechless. She had been mocked and ridiculed for her body, yet here stood the Sultan, declaring her the epitome of beauty. The world, it seemed, had turned upside down. Elif entered the Sultan's studio with hesitant steps. The cool marble floor soothed, her bare feet a welcome contrast to the scorching sun outside. The air hummed with a creative energy she had never encountered before. Blocks of marble, some rough-hewn, others partially carved, stood like silent giants around the room. The scent of clay and stone dust filled her nostrils. Dawood greeted her with a warm smile, his eyes twinkling with a mixture of excitement and kindness. He gestured towards a low platform draped with a simple cloth. "Please, make yourself comfortable," he said. Elif climbed onto the platform, feeling self-conscious under his gaze. She had never posed for anything before, and the idea of holding still for hours felt unnatural. She shifted her weight from one foot to the other, unsure of where to place her hands. Dawood sensed her discomfort and spoke gently. "Relax, Elif. There is no need to be nervous. Just be yourself." He picked up a lump of clay, his fingers, working it with practiced ease. "I want to capture your natural grace, your inner strength. There is no need for pretense here." He began to explain his vision for the sculpture, describing the goddess of strength he sought to bring to life. He spoke of her resilience, her unwavering spirit, her connection to the earth. As he spoke, his passion ignited a spark within Elif. She began to understand that he saw her not as a mere object, but as a source of inspiration. He saw the beauty in her strength, the power in her simplicity. The initial awkwardness began to fade as Dawood guided her through various poses, his instructions clear and encouraging. He showed her how to hold her head high, how to extend her arms to convey a sense of power, how to stand firm as if rooted to the earth. He spoke of the human form as a work of art, celebrating its curves and contours, its imperfections and asymmetries. He made her feel seen, truly seen, for the first time in her life. During breaks, they talked. Dawood asked about her life, her experiences working in the gardens. He listened intently as she spoke of the rhythms of nature, the satisfaction of nurturing life from the soil, the simple joys of watching the sun rise and set. He in turn shared his thoughts on art, philosophy, and the challenges of leadership. He confessed his disillusionment with the superficiality of court life, his yearning for something deeper and more meaningful. Elif, surprised by his candor, found herself drawn to his gentle spirit and his insightful mind. A genuine connection began to form between them, a bond forged in the shared space of artistic creation and honest conversation. The studio, once a place of intimidation, slowly transformed into a sanctuary, a place where Elif could shed her insecurities and embrace the unique beauty that Dawood had so readily recognized. The days that followed were a blur of clay dust and stolen glances. Each morning, Elif would leave the gardens and make her way to Dawood's studio, her heart beating a little faster with each step. The other concubines noticed her absence, their whispers turning from mockery to speculation. Where did the ox go? What could the Sultan possibly want with her? Elif paid them no mind. In the studio, she found a sense of purpose she had never known before. During the posing sessions, Dawood's gaze was not that of a sultan surveying his possessions, but of an artist studying his muse. He watched her with an intensity that made her skin tingle, but it was an intensity devoid of lust. He saw her strength, her resilience, the quiet dignity that radiated from within. He captured these qualities in the clay, shaping the goddess's form with a reverence that mirrored his respect for Elif. During breaks, they would sit together in the cool shade of the studio, sipping mint tea and sharing stories. Elif told him of her childhood, spent working in the fields, of the harsh sun and the long days, but also of the joy she found in the bounty of the earth. She spoke of her family, of the love that bound them together, despite their hardships. She told him of her capture and the fear she felt when she was brought to the palace, a world so different from her own. Dawood listened patiently, his eyes filled with empathy. He saw not a slave girl, but a woman of remarkable strength and spirit. Dawood, in turn, shared his own struggles. He spoke of the pressures of being a sultan, the constant demands of the court, the endless parade of advisors and petitioners. He confessed his disillusionment with the artificiality of palace life, the shallow conversations, the endless pursuit of power and pleasure. He told her of his search for true beauty, a beauty that went beyond the surface, a beauty that resonated with the soul. He admitted that he found that beauty in her honesty, her strength, her connection to the earth. With each conversation, their bond deepened. Elif, who had always felt like an outsider, began to feel seen and understood. Dawood, who had grown weary of the superficiality of his world, found solace in her genuine nature. They discovered a shared love for the simple things, for the beauty of the natural world, for the power of human connection. The stolen glances became longer, the conversations more intimate. A silent understanding blossomed between them, a connection that transcended their different stations in life, a connection that hinted at the possibility of something more. Word spread through the harem like wildfire. The Sultan, it was whispered, had taken an unusual interest in Elif, the strong, sun-browned slave girl from the gardens. He spent hours with her in his private studio, a place previously reserved. For his solitary artistic pursuits, the other concubines, accustomed to vying for his attention, were baffled. They had perfected the art of the coy smile, the graceful gesture, the flattering whisper. Yet the Sultan seemed oblivious to their charms, his gaze drawn instead to the unconventional beauty of Elif. Jealousy, like a venomous serpent, began to coil in their hearts. They watched Elif with narrowed eyes, their whispers laced with venom. "What does he see in her?" one hissed, her voice dripping with disdain. "She's nothing but a common laborer." Another chimed in. "He must have lost his mind, preferring an ox to a gazelle." They couldn't comprehend Dawood's fascination with Elif's strong body, her sun-kissed skin, her unadorned beauty. They clung to their belief that delicate fragility was the only true measure of feminine appeal. Elif felt the weight of their stares, the sting of their words. She walked through the palace corridors with her head down, trying to make herself small, to disappear into the shadows. The old insecurities resurfaced, whispering doubts in her ear. Was she truly worthy of the Sultan's attention? Was it all a cruel joke, a fleeting fancy that would soon fade? But then she would remember. Dawood's words, his gentle gaze, the way he saw her, not as a slave girl, but as a woman of strength and grace. She recalled his admiration for her form, his appreciation for her spirit. His kindness had planted a seed of confidence within her, a seed that was slowly beginning to sprout. One afternoon, as she walked back from the studio, she encountered a group of concubines gathered in the courtyard. They stopped their chatter as she approached, their eyes fixed on her with a mixture of curiosity and contempt. One of them, emboldened by the presence of her companions, stepped forward. "So," she sneered, "the Sultan's new pet. Tell us, what magic have you used to bewitch him?" Elif paused, her hand instinctively going to her arm, as if to shield herself from their barbs. But then something shifted within her. Dawood's words echoed in her mind. "Your form is magnificent, truly magnificent." She straightened her back, lifted her chin, and met their gazes with a newfound steadiness. "No magic," she replied, her voice clear and strong. "He sees me for who I am. He sees my strength, and he finds it beautiful." She walked past them, her head held high, her steps firm and confident. The whispers followed her, but they no longer stung. They were like the buzzing of flies, an irritant but not a threat. Elif had begun to embrace her own unique beauty, a beauty that transcended the narrow confines of the harem's standards. She realized that true beauty was not about conforming to someone else's ideal, but about owning and celebrating the unique qualities that made her who she was. The journey wouldn't be easy, but for the first time, Elif felt a glimmer of hope, a sense of self-worth that no amount of ridicule could diminish. Mistress Zara, the harem's fashion overseer, surveyed the women gathered in the courtyard, like a hawk eyeing its prey. Her gaze lingered on their slender figures, their pale skin, their meticulously styled hair. She prided herself on maintaining the highest standards of beauty within the harem, ensuring that each concubine adhered to her strict ideals of delicate grace and ethereal charm. Her word was law when it came to matters of fashion and appearance, and she ruled her domain with an iron fist veiled in silk. Zara believed that beauty was a weapon, a tool to be wielded with precision and finesse. She had spent years honing her skills, mastering the art of adornment, transforming ordinary girls into visions of exquisite perfection. She believed in the power of illusion, the transformative magic of cosmetics and carefully chosen fabrics. She had little patience for those who did not share her vision, those who dared to deviate from her carefully prescribed standards. News of the Sultan's interest in Elif had reached Zara's ears, and a cold knot of unease tightened in her stomach. Elif, with her strong body, her sun-browned skin, her unadorned simplicity, represented everything Zara despised. She saw Elif as a threat, a disruption to the carefully constructed order of the harem. This slave girl, this ox as the other concubines called her, was challenging the very foundation of Zara's authority. Zara's sharp eyes narrowed as she watched Elif walk across the courtyard, her head held high, a newfound confidence radiating from her. This would not do. This defiance had to be quelled before it spread like a contagion through the harem. Zara would not allow her carefully crafted world of illusion to be shattered by this peasant girl. She summoned her closest confidants, a group of concubines, who shared her disdain for Elif and her unconventional beauty. They gathered around her, their faces eager for gossip and intrigue. "Have you seen the Sultan lately?" Zara began, her voice laced with feigned concern. "He seems different, distracted, preoccupied." The women murmured in agreement, their eyes wide with curiosity. Zara leaned closer, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "I fear he's been bewitched by that girl, Elif." She shuddered dramatically, as if the mere mention of Elif's name left a bad taste in her mouth. "Bewitched?" one of the concubines gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "But how?" Zara smiled, a thin, cruel smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Who knows what kind of dark magic she practices? She's not one of us. She's different." She let the word hang in the air, heavy with implication. The seeds of doubt had been planted. Zara watched with satisfaction as the whispers spread, the rumors taking root and blossoming into full-blown paranoia. The Sultan, it was whispered, had gone mad. He had fallen under the spell of a common slave girl, a girl who defied all notions of beauty and decorum. Elif, once an object of ridicule, now became a figure of fear, a symbol of the Sultan's supposed madness. Zahra knew that fear was a powerful weapon, a weapon she could wield to maintain her control, to crush any challenge to her authority. And so, the campaign against Elif began. A campaign fueled by jealousy, fear, and the desperate need to preserve the fragile illusion of beauty that Zahra had so carefully constructed. The whispers turned to stares. The stares turned to snickers. The snickers turned to open hostility. Zahra's poison had spread through the harem, turning the other concubines against Elif. They avoided her in the hallways, their faces contorted in expressions of disgust. They refused to share meals with her, leaving her to eat alone in the shadows of the dining hall. They mocked her behind her back, their laughter echoing cruelly through the marble corridors. Elif felt the walls closing in around her. The sanctuary she had found in Dawood's studio felt miles away, a distant memory in a world that had suddenly turned hostile. The other women, once objects of indifference, now felt like a pack of wolves, circling her, waiting for her to stumble. She tried to ignore them, to focus on the kindness she had found in Dawood, but their relentless cruelty chipped away at her newfound confidence. One afternoon, as she walked through the gardens, a group of concubines blocked her path. Their leader, a girl named Amira, known for her sharp tongue and even sharper elbows, stepped forward. "Look who it is," she sneered, her voice dripping with venom. "The Sultan's new favorite, the ox who thinks she's a goddess." The other girls giggled, their faces alight with malicious glee. Amira reached out and snatched a flower from Elif's hair, crushing it in her hand. "You don't belong here," she hissed. "You're nothing but a dirty peasant. The Sultan will tire of you soon enough, and then you'll be back where you belong, in the dirt." Elif's eyes welled with tears, but she refused to let them fall. She straightened her back, lifted her chin and met Amira's gaze. "The Sultan sees beauty in strength," she said, her voice trembling but firm. "A beauty you will never understand." She pushed past them, her heart pounding in her chest, the sting of their words echoing in her ears. She wanted to run, to hide, to disappear, but she knew she couldn't. She had to be strong, for herself, for Dawood, for the belief he had placed in her. Meanwhile, Dawood faced his own challenges. His advisors, men steeped in tradition and protocol, were growing increasingly concerned about his fascination with Elif. They saw her as a distraction, a threat to his image, a stain on the dignity of the Sultanate. "Your Majesty," one of his oldest advisors, a man named Vizier Hassan, said, his voice grave, "your interest in this slave girl is causing unrest. The people are whispering. The court is buzzing with rumors. It is not fitting for a sultan to bestow such attention on someone of her station." Another advisor, a younger man eager to prove his loyalty, chimed in, "Your Majesty, the harem is filled with women of exquisite beauty and noble lineage. Why would you choose to elevate a common laborer above them? It undermines tradition. It sends the wrong message." Dawood listened, patiently, his face impassive. He understood their concerns, the weight of tradition, the importance of maintaining appearances. But he also knew that his heart had found something true and beautiful in Elif, something that transcended the artificial constructs of the court. "I appreciate your concern," he said, his voice calm and measured, "but my interest in Elif is not a matter of mere physical attraction. I see in her a strength of character, a purity of spirit that is rare and precious. She inspires my art. She challenges my thinking. She reminds me of what truly matters." His advisers exchanged uneasy glances. They had expected him to dismiss their concerns, to reassure them that this was merely a fleeting infatuation. But his words, spoken with such conviction, suggested something deeper, something that threatened to disrupt the established order. The seeds of doubt had been sown, not just in the harem, but in the very heart of the Sultanate. The pressure on Dawood was mounting, and he knew that he would soon have to make a choice between duty and desire, between tradition and truth. Dawood paced the length of his private chamber, the weight of the kingdom pressing upon his shoulders. He loved Elif, not with the fleeting passion he had felt for other women in the harem, but with a deep and abiding respect that grew stronger with each passing day. He saw in her a strength and resilience that mirrored his own, a kindred spirit, who understood the burdens of responsibility and the yearning for something true and beautiful in a world filled with artifice. But his love for Elif was causing ripples, disrupting the delicate balance of the court, threatening to undermine the very foundations of his rule. His advisers' warnings echoed in his ears, their words like the incessant buzzing of flies, a constant reminder of the dangers he faced. He knew that Zara was behind the whispers and the stares, the growing hostility towards Elif. He had seen the malice in her eyes, the subtle manipulations, the way she poisoned the minds of the other concubines. He had to protect Elif, not just from the petty cruelties of the harem, but from the very real threat Zara posed to her safety and well-being. But how? He was the Sultan, bound by tradition, by duty, by the expectations of his people. He couldn't simply banish Zara without cause, without proof of her machinations. He needed evidence, something concrete to expose her treachery and silence her venomous tongue. Meanwhile, Elif sat alone in the gardens, the once vibrant flowers seeming to droop under the weight of her sorrow. The other concubines' cruelty had taken its toll, their words like sharp stones thrown at her heart. She felt isolated, alone in a world that had once seemed so full of promise. She closed her eyes, picturing Dawood's kind face, his gentle gaze, the way he saw her, not as a slave girl, but as a woman of strength and beauty. His words, his belief in her, had given her a sense of worth she had never known before. But now, she wondered if it was all a mistake. Was her presence in the palace causing more harm than good? Was she bringing shame upon Dawood, undermining his authority, fueling the fires of dissent? She thought of the rumors, the whispers of the Sultan's madness, the accusations of witchcraft. She had seen the fear in the eyes of the other concubines, the suspicion in the gazes of the palace guards. She was a disruption, an anomaly, a threat to the established order. Perhaps it would be better for everyone, for Dawood, for the kingdom, if she simply disappeared, if she returned to the gardens, to the familiar comfort of the earth, the predictable rhythm of the seasons. She considered giving up posing for Dawood, ending their stolen moments in the studio, severing the fragile bond that had blossomed between them. The thought filled her with a deep ache, a sense of loss that threatened to consume her. But what choice did she have? She couldn't bear the thought of causing Dawood further pain, of being the source of his troubles. Perhaps, she thought, her love for him was best expressed through sacrifice, through the selfless act of removing herself from his life, allowing him to rule without the burden of her unconventional presence. Tears streamed down her face, hot and heavy, as she wrestled with the agonizing decision, torn between her love for Dawood and her fear of the damage she was causing. Elif's tears fell silently onto the parched earth. She sat huddled beneath, the shade of a date palm, her body racked with sobs. A gentle hand touched her shoulder. She looked up and saw Mariam, a kind-faced palace servant who often brought refreshments to the gardens. Mariam's eyes, filled with compassion, met Elif's. "Child, what troubles you so?" she asked, her voice soft and soothing. Elif hesitated, unsure whether to trust this woman she barely knew. But Mariam's gentle presence, her genuine concern, melted the icy wall around Elif's heart. She poured out her story, the cruel taunts of the other concubines, the rumors of the Sultan's madness, the fear that she was causing more harm than good. Mariam listened patiently, her hand resting on Elif's arm, a silent offering of comfort. When Elif finished, Mariam sighed. "Child," she said, her voice firm, "you mustn't let their words break you. The Sultan sees something special in you, something they cannot comprehend. Their jealousy is a testament to your strength, not your weakness." Elif looked up, surprised by Mariam's words. "But what can I do?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "I am just a slave girl. They are many, and I am alone." Mariam smiled. "You are not alone, child," she said. "There are those in this palace who value kindness and truth above beauty and status. We may not be powerful, but we are many, and we will help you." Mariam offered Elif practical advice, suggesting ways to navigate the treacherous currents of the harem. She told her to ignore the whispers, to hold her head high, to focus on the Sultan's kindness and the growing strength within herself. She promised to keep an ear out, to gather information about Zara's activities, to find evidence of her manipulations. Elif, touched by Mariam's unexpected support, felt a flicker of hope rekindle in her heart. She had found an ally, a friend in this vast and unfamiliar world. Meanwhile, Dawood, his jaw set with determination, summoned his most trusted advisor, a man named Omar, known for his discretion and unwavering loyalty. "Omar," Dawood said, his voice low and intense, "I need you to investigate Mistress Zahra. I suspect she is behind the rumors spreading through the harem, the growing hostility towards Elif." Omar, though surprised by the Sultan's request, bowed his head in agreement. "Your Majesty, I will do as you command. I will uncover the truth, no matter where it leads." Dawood paced the length of his chamber, his mind racing. He knew that Zara was a formidable opponent, cunning and ruthless in her pursuit of power. He had to tread carefully, to gather irrefutable evidence before he could confront her. He couldn't afford to make a mistake, not when Elif's safety, and perhaps even his own reign, hung in the balance. He instructed Omar to interview the palace servants, to listen for whispers, to observe Zara's interactions with the other concubines. He wanted to know everything, every detail, every subtle manipulation. He was determined to expose Zara's treachery, to protect Elif from her venomous attacks, and to restore balance to his troubled kingdom. The game had begun, and Dawood, with Omar by his side, was ready to play. Omar, his face grim, entered Dawood's private chamber. He held a small, intricately carved wooden box in his hands. "Your Majesty," he said, his voice low, "I believe I have found what you seek." Dawood took the box, his fingers tracing the delicate carvings. He opened it slowly, revealing a collection of letters bound together with a silken cord. He unfolded the topmost letter, his eyes scanning the elegant script. It was a message from Zahra to one of her confidants, a girl named Layla, instructing her to spread rumors about Elif, to suggest that she was using dark magic to bewitch the Sultan. Dawood read through the other letters, each one a piece of the puzzle, revealing the extent of Zahra's machinations. She had orchestrated the campaign of whispers and stares, the subtle acts of sabotage, the growing hostility towards Elif. She had poisoned the minds of the other concubines, turning them against Elif with lies and insinuations. She had even gone so far as to suggest that Elif was a threat to the Sultan's health, a dangerous influence who needed to be removed from the palace. Dawood's jaw tightened as he read the final letter, a chilling message to a merchant outside. The palace walls requesting a rare and potent poison, a poison that left no trace. His blood ran cold. Zara wasn't just trying to undermine Elif's reputation, she was plotting to take her life. He closed the box, his mind racing. He had the evidence he needed, the proof of Zara's treachery. But he had to tread carefully. He couldn't simply accuse her without risking further harm to Elif. He needed a plan, a way to expose her without putting Elif in danger. He summoned Omar and shared his thoughts. They discussed various strategies, weighing the risks and benefits of each approach. They decided to wait, to gather more evidence, to build a stronger case against Zara. They would watch her closely, observing her every move, waiting for the right moment to strike. Meanwhile, in the gardens, Elif felt a renewed sense of strength coursing through her veins. Mariam's kindness, her unwavering support, had given her the courage to face the challenges that lay ahead. She had found an ally in this unfamiliar world, a friend who believed in her, who saw her worth, despite the whispers and the stares. Mariam continued to offer guidance and support, sharing stories of women who had overcome adversity, who had risen above the limitations imposed upon them. She reminded Elif of her own inner strength, her resilience, her connection to the earth. She encouraged her to hold her head high, to ignore the petty cruelties of the other concubines, to focus on the beauty and strength that Dawood saw in her. Elif began to practice small acts of defiance. She walked through the palace corridors with her head held high, her steps firm and confident. She met the gazes of the other concubines without flinching, their sneers and whispers no longer holding the same power over her. She spent time in the gardens, nurturing the plants, drawing strength from the earth, reminding herself of her own resilience. She thought of Dawood, his gentle gaze, his unwavering belief in her. She knew that he was facing his own challenges, his own battles against the forces of tradition and prejudice. She wanted to be strong for him, to be a source of support, a reminder of the beauty and truth that they had found together. She knew that the road ahead would be difficult, but she was no longer afraid. She had found her voice, her strength, her purpose, and she was ready to fight for what she believed in, for the love she had found, for the future she envisioned, a future where strength and beauty were celebrated in all their forms. Mariam, with her quiet wisdom and gentle demeanor, moved through the harem like a whisper in the wind. She approached the concubines one by one, choosing her moments with care. She spoke to them not of Elif, but of their own experiences, their own struggles within the confines of the palace walls. She listened patiently to their stories of petty jealousies, of cruel taunts, of Zara's iron-fisted rule. She spoke to Layla, Zara's former confidant, whose conscience had begun to prick her. Layla, burdened by guilt, confessed to spreading the rumors about Elif, admitting that Zara had coerced her with promises of favor and threats of punishment. Mariam listened without judgment, offering words of comfort and understanding. She spoke to Fatima, a shy girl who had been ridiculed for her quiet nature, for her inability to match the other concubines' flamboyant displays of charm. Fatima, her eyes filled with tears, recounted the countless times Zara had belittled her, mocked her simple clothes, and dismissed her as unworthy of the Sultan's attention. She spoke to Yasmin, a talented musician who had been forbidden to play. Her instrument, her music deemed too wild and untamed for the refined tastes of the harem. Yasmin, her voice filled with bitterness, described how Zara had crushed her spirit, silencing her voice, stealing her joy. One by one, the women opened their hearts to Mariam, their stories weaving a tapestry of cruelty and manipulation, a testament to Zara's reign of terror. Mariam carefully documented their testimonies, writing down their words, preserving their stories, building a case against the woman who had held them captive in a web of fear and insecurity. Meanwhile, Dawood, armed with the evidence Omar had gathered, began to rally support among his advisors. He spoke to Vizier Hassan, the oldest and most respected of his council, a man known for his wisdom and his unwavering commitment to justice. He showed Hassan the letters, the irrefutable proof of Zara's treachery. Hassan, his face grave, read the letters with growing dismay. He had long suspected that Zara's influence within the harem was unhealthy, but he had never imagined the extent of her cruelty, the depth of her depravity. He pledged his support to Dawood, promising to use his influence to persuade the other advisors to stand against Zahra. Dawood then spoke to Omar, sharing his plan to confront Zahra. He knew that he had to act swiftly, decisively, before she could cause further harm. He instructed Omar to prepare the necessary arrangements to ensure that Zahra would be held accountable for her actions. The wheels of justice began to turn, slowly but surely, gathering momentum, building towards a confrontation that would shake the foundations of the harem and change the lives of the women who lived within its walls. The time for whispers and shadows was over. The time for truth and justice had come. Dawood summoned Zahra to his private chamber. The room, usually filled with the comforting scent of sandalwood and jasmine, now felt heavy with anticipation. Sunlight streamed through the arched windows, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air, creating an almost ethereal atmosphere that belied the tensions simmering beneath the surface. Dawood sat on a low divan, his posture regal yet relaxed, his gaze fixed on the ornate doors. Beside him, Omar stood silently, his hand resting on the hilt of his ceremonial sword, a subtle reminder of the Sultan's authority. The doors opened, and Zahra entered, her head held high, her expression carefully composed. She moved with her usual grace, her silk robes swirling around her like a whisper of smoke. She bowed low before Dawood, her voice smooth as honey. "Your Majesty, you summoned me?" Dawood gestured for her to be seated. She settled onto a cushion opposite him, her back ramrod straight, her eyes meeting his without flinching. "Mistress Zahra," Dawood began, his voice calm and measured, "I have received disturbing reports regarding your conduct within the harem." A flicker of unease crossed Zahra's face, but she quickly masked it with a cool smile. "Reports, Your Majesty? I assure you, I have always acted in the best interests of the harem and the Sultanate." Dawood held up the wooden box containing the letters Omar had gathered. "These letters," he said, his voice hardening, "tell a different story." He opened the box and spread the letters out before her, the elegant script a stark contrast to the ugliness they contained. Zahra's eyes widened as she recognized her own handwriting, her carefully crafted words now a weapon turned against her. She tried to maintain her composure, but a bead of sweat trickled down her temple, betraying her inner turmoil. These are forgeries," she stammered, her voice losing its usual smoothness. "Someone is trying to frame me." Dawood leaned forward, his gaze piercing. "These letters were written by your own hand, Mistress Zahra. They detail your campaign of lies and manipulation, your attempts to undermine Elif, your plot to poison her." Zahra's defiance crumbled. She knew she was trapped, the evidence stacked against her, but surrender was not in her nature. She had clawed her way to power, using her beauty and her cunning to manipulate those around her. She would not give up without a fight. "Even if these letters are genuine," she hissed, her voice laced with venom, "what proof do you have that I acted on these intentions? Words are just words, Your Majesty. They cannot harm anyone." Dawood's eyes narrowed. He had anticipated her defiance, her desperate attempts to cling to power. He gestured to Omar, who stepped forward and placed a small vial on the table between them. "This vial," Omar said, his voice devoid of emotion, "contains the poison you requested from the merchant outside the palace walls. It was found, hidden amongst your belongings." Zahra's face paled. She stared at the vial, her eyes wide with fear. She had been outmaneuvered, her carefully laid plans unraveling before her eyes. But even now, a spark of defiance flickered within her. She lunged forward, grabbing the vial before anyone could react. She uncorked it, the pungent aroma of the poison filling the air. "If I am to fall," she hissed, her voice trembling with rage, "I will not fall alone." She raised the vial to her lips, her eyes fixed on Dawood, a mixture of hatred and desperation swirling within them. The room held its breath, the air thick with suspense as Zahra made her desperate final move. Excitement buzzed through the palace. The unveiling of the Sultan's new sculpture was just days away, and preparations were underway. Tapestries were hung, musicians were hired, and the finest silks were brought out to adorn the grand hall. For Elif, the anticipation was mixed with a growing sense of dread. She knew Zahra was plotting against her, and she feared what the woman might do. Dawood had assured Elif that he would protect her, that Zahra's days of power were numbered. He had shown her the evidence he'd gathered, the letters, the poison, proof of Zahra's treachery. He promised that justice would be served, but Elif couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, that a storm was brewing. The night before the unveiling, Elif couldn't sleep. She tossed and turned, her mind filled with anxious thoughts. She rose before dawn and made her way to Dawood's studio, seeking solace in the familiar space, the comforting presence of the half-finished sculpture. The goddess of strength stood proudly on her pedestal, her form almost complete. Dawood had captured Elif's essence perfectly, the strength in her stance, the grace in her posture, the quiet dignity that radiated from within. Elif reached out and gently touched the cool marble, a sense of awe washing over her. Suddenly, a crash echoed through the studio, followed by a shriek of rage. Elif spun around to see Zahra standing in the doorway, her face contorted with fury, a heavy mallet clutched in her hand. Before Elif could react, Zahra swung the mallet, bringing it down with brutal force on the goddess's outstretched arm. The marble cracked, a sickening sound that echoed through the still air. Elif gasped, her hand flying to her mouth, the goddess's arm, so carefully sculpted, so lovingly crafted, now lay broken at her feet. Tears streamed down Elif's face as she knelt beside the damaged sculpture, her heart breaking along with the marble. All her hopes, her dreams, her newfound confidence shattered in a single devastating blow. Dawood rushed into the studio, his face etched with concern. He saw the broken sculpture, the tears streaming down Elif's face, the mallet clutched in Zahra's trembling hand. He understood instantly what had happened. He approached Elif and gently took her hand, his eyes filled with compassion. "Elif," he said softly, his voice thick with emotion, "I am so sorry." He turned to Zahra, his gaze hardening. "You will pay for this." Zahra, her face a mask of defiance, opened her mouth to speak, but Dawood silenced her with a wave of his hand. He turned back to Elif, his voice softening again. "Come," he said, leading her away from the broken sculpture, away from Zahra's venomous presence. He led her to a quiet corner of the studio where he sat beside her, holding her hand, letting her tears fall onto his silk robes. "Elif," he said, his voice low and intense, "I know how you feel. I know what it's like to be mocked, to be ridiculed for your body, to feel like an outsider." He paused, his gaze distant, as if remembering a painful memory. "When I was a young man," he continued, his voice barely a whisper, "I suffered from a wasting illness. It left me scarred and frail. I wore heavy robes to hide my body, to shield myself from the whispers and stares." He pulled back the sleeve of his robe, revealing a network of thin white scars that crisscrossed his arm. Elif stared at the scars, her tears subsiding, replaced by a wave of empathy. "I understand your pain, Elif," he said, his eyes meeting hers. "I understand the shame, the insecurity, the feeling of being different. That is why I saw your beauty, your strength, when others saw only something unusual. That is why I wanted to capture your essence in marble, to celebrate the strength that shines from within you." Elif looked at Dawood, her heart swelling with love and gratitude. He had shared his vulnerability with her, his own hidden pain, and in doing so he had deepened their connection, strengthened the bond between them. She knew in that moment that their love was more than just a fleeting fancy, more than just a shared appreciation for beauty. It was a bond forged in empathy, in understanding, in the shared experience of overcoming adversity. It was a love that would endure, a love that would transform not just their lives, but the lives of everyone around them. Guards rushed into the studio, alerted by the commotion. They found Zara standing over the damaged sculpture, the mallet still clutched in her hand, her face a mask of fury. Dawood, his voice ringing with authority, ordered the guards to seize her. Zara struggled, spitting curses and accusations, but the guards held her firm. Dawood then addressed the small gathering of servants and artists who had witnessed the scene. He spoke of Zara's treachery, her jealousy, her cruelty towards Elif. He revealed the letters, the poison, the evidence of her plot to harm Elif and undermine his rule. He spoke of his own struggles with body image, his empathy for Elif, his belief in her strength and beauty. He declared that such narrow standards of beauty would no longer be tolerated in his palace, that all women, regardless of their shape or size, deserved respect and admiration. He then turned to Zara, his gaze unwavering. "You have abused your position, Mistress Zara," he said, his voice cold and hard. "You have spread lies and sowed discord within my harem. You have attempted to harm an innocent woman. For these crimes, you are hereby banished from the palace. You will be escorted from the kingdom at once, and you are forbidden ever to return." The guards dragged Zara away, her screams echoing through the marble corridors. Elif watched her go, a sense of relief washing over her. The threat had been neutralized, the poison removed. Dawood turned to Elif, his eyes filled with warmth and admiration. He took her hand and raised it to his lips, his touch gentle yet firm. "Elif," he said, his voice soft, "you have shown remarkable strength and resilience in the face of adversity. You have inspired me, not just with your beauty, but with your spirit. You have shown me the true meaning of strength, the true meaning of beauty." Elif looked at Dawood, his vulnerability and his unwavering support filling her. With a surge of love and respect, she saw not just a sultan, but a man of great compassion and integrity, a man who was willing to challenge tradition, to fight for what he believed in, to protect those he loved. In that moment, she knew that she had found not just a protector, but a partner, a soulmate, a love that would transform their lives and the lives of everyone around them. The grand hall buzzed with anticipation. Sunlight streamed through the stained glass windows, painting colorful patterns on the polished marble floor. Guests, adorned in their finest silks and jewels, whispered amongst themselves, their eyes fixed on the veiled statue that stood at the center of the room. The unveiling of the Sultan's new sculpture was the talk of the kingdom, and everyone was eager to witness the masterpiece that had been shrouded in secrecy for so long. Dawood stood before the assembled crowd, his bearing regal, his eyes sparkling with a mixture of pride and anticipation. He spoke of his vision for the sculpture, his desire to capture the essence of strength, not in the traditional form of a warrior or a king, but in the form of a woman who embodied resilience, grace, and unwavering spirit. He spoke of the inspiration he had found in Elif, a woman who had defied the narrow confines of beauty, who had shown him the true meaning of strength, the true meaning of beauty. He reached out and pulled back the veil, revealing the statue in all its glory. The goddess of strength stood tall and proud, her form radiating power and grace. The repaired arm, now seamlessly rejoined, was a testament to Dawood's skill. and his unwavering determination to restore the damaged masterpiece. But it was the goddess's face, sculpted in Elif's likeness, that captured everyone's attention. It was not a face of conventional beauty, but a face that radiated strength, confidence, and an inner light that shone brighter than any jewel. Beside the statue, Elif stood tall and proud, her head held high, her eyes sparkling with a newfound confidence. She wore a simple gown of flowing white linen, her strong arms and sun-kissed skin a stark contrast to the delicate figures and impale complexions of the other women in the harem. She was a vision of unconventional beauty, a testament to the Sultan's new vision, a symbol of the changing times. Dawood gestured towards Elif, his voice ringing with conviction. "Today," he declared, "we usher in a new era in the harem, an era where beauty is celebrated in all its forms, where strength and resilience are valued above all else." He announced the abolishment of the narrow beauty standards that had long held sway, the restrictive rules that had confined women to a single, unattainable ideal. He declared that the harem would no longer be a place of competition and jealousy, but a place of support and empowerment, a place where women could celebrate their unique qualities, their individual strengths, their diverse forms of beauty. A wave of murmurs rippled through the crowd, a mixture of surprise, confusion, and cautious optimism. The women of the harem, accustomed to the rigid hierarchy, the relentless pursuit of the Sultan's favor, looked at each other with a mixture of disbelief and hope. Elif, standing beside the statue that bore her likeness, felt a surge of empowerment, a sense of purpose that resonated deep within her soul. Dawood, his eyes fixed on Elif, announced her new role within the harem. "Elif," he said, his voice filled with warmth and admiration, "will be our guide, our mentor, our instructor. She will share her knowledge of fitness and strength training, empowering the women of the harem to embrace their physical power, to cultivate their inner strength, to celebrate the beauty of their own unique forms." Elif stepped forward, her voice clear and strong. She spoke of her own journey, her struggles with insecurity, her discovery of the strength that lay within. She invited the other women to join her, to embark on a journey of self-discovery, to embrace their own unique forms of beauty. The women, their eyes wide with curiosity and a newfound sense of excitement, gathered around Elif, eager to learn from her, to embrace the change that Dawood had ushered in. The harem, once a place of confinement and competition, began its transformation into a place of empowerment and celebration, a place where women could discover their own strength, their own beauty, their own unique place in the world. Dawood and Elif's love blossomed under the desert sun. Their stolen moments in the studio, once filled with the scent of clay and the quiet murmur of shared confidences, now resonated with the unspoken language of love. Their connection, forged in mutual respect and a shared appreciation for true beauty, deepened with each passing day. Dawood saw in Elif a strength and resilience that captivated his heart, a spirit that shone brighter than any jewel in his treasury. Elif, in turn, saw in Dawood a kindness and understanding that she had never known before, a man who valued her not for her appearance, but for the strength of her character, the beauty of her soul. Their love story became a whispered legend within the palace walls, a tale of a sultan who had defied tradition, who had chosen to see beauty where others saw only difference. It was a story that inspired hope, a story that spoke of the transformative power of love. And so it was with great joy and celebration that Dawood announced his intention to marry Elif, not as a concubine, but as his queen. The wedding was a grand affair, a celebration of love and a testament to the changing values of the kingdom. The grand hall, once a stage for displays of superficial beauty, was now adorned with vibrant tapestries celebrating the diversity of the kingdom's people. Music, once confined to the rigid melodies of courtly tradition, now pulsed with the rhythms of the desert, the joyful chants of celebration. Elif, radiant in a gown of shimmering gold, stood beside Dawood, her hand clasped. In his, they exchanged vows, not of obedience and subservience, but of mutual respect, of shared purpose, of unwavering love. Their union was a symbol of a new era, an era of acceptance, of inclusivity, of the celebration of true beauty in all its forms. As queen, Elif continued to champion the cause of diversity and empowerment. She instituted programs that promoted education and physical fitness for all women, regardless of their social standing. She established workshops where women could learn new skills, develop their talents, and discover their own unique forms of beauty. The harem, once a place of confinement and competition, was transformed into a vibrant community, a place of learning, of growth, of mutual support. Dawood, inspired by Elif's vision, implemented policies that celebrated the diversity of his kingdom. He promoted people based on their merits, not their lineage, recognizing the value of talent and hard work regardless of social status. He encouraged artists and scholars to explore new forms of expression, to challenge traditional norms, to celebrate the richness and complexity of their culture. Together, Dawood and Elif ruled with wisdom and compassion, their love a guiding light for their kingdom. They traveled throughout the land, listening to the voices of their people, addressing their concerns, working tirelessly to create a society where everyone felt valued, where everyone had the opportunity to thrive. Years passed, and the kingdom flourished under their just and compassionate rule. The once rigid social structures began to crumble, replaced by a more fluid and inclusive society. The arts thrived, fueled by a newfound spirit of creativity and innovation. The people, inspired by their rulers' example, embraced the values of diversity and acceptance, celebrating the unique qualities that made their kingdom so rich and vibrant. Dawood and Elif, their love growing stronger with each passing year, often walked hand in hand through the palace gardens, reminiscing about the day they first met. The whispers and stares that had once followed Elif were now replaced with smiles of admiration and respect. The ridicule had turned to reverence, the mockery into appreciation. Their love story, once a whispered secret, had become a source of inspiration for the entire kingdom, a testament to the transformative power of love, acceptance, and the celebration of true beauty in all its forms. They lived happily ever after, their legacy woven into the very fabric of their kingdom, a kingdom transformed by the love of a sultan and his strong, sun-kissed queen.